All right, hey everybody. So I'm doing this one take, no rehearsal. I kind of got this new thing I've been working on. I think it's pretty cool in an ed kind of way. It's called either Spec Driven Development or Vibe Driven Development, maybe. But the idea is kind of like vibe coding meets TDD plus a development lifecycle you're familiar with it. So I'm not going to go too long, but let's go to the basics, right? If you're doing TDD, test driven development, you could use Gherkin, you could not use Gherkin, but generally you try to write your requirements in English, which is now floating around a lot. Everybody's like, oh my God, the new spec is English or language, human language. The spec was always human language. Most people don't have meet on the street and talk in code. They talk in English or their native language. We'll just say English for now because I speak English. But TDD kind of looks something like this. You say given something. Let me make my screen a little bigger if I remember how. I think it's Control Shift this. Nope, nope, nope. That's collapse. Almost. Let's see. How do you make the text bigger? Let me see. Should ask the AI. I think it's big enough. So you would you have some function like my inference engine. I want it to be able to download models from Hugging Face. So I give it a model name. When I try to download the model, then it works, right? It's kind of a very standard way of doing test-driven development, right? Where you would sometimes you would make the test first. You can't really make the test first because sometimes you have to mock out the interfaces and they have to fail. So you have to write some user code first. But the idea is you start from the requirements, not start from writing code. The same is true with the bug. If you have a confirmed bug, you commit the bug to the test and then you run through and then you fix the bug, right? You could use TDD in developing new stuff and in old stuff. Anyway, so what have I been working on? What's vibe driven development? Like okay. Um so one is if English is the new spec, what I kind of see is a lot of people who are like, well, but okay, if English is the spec, but how do I do it? I know how I do code in my IDE. I check out a branch, I write some code, I write some tests, I commit the branch. And then what I see people kind of doing now, or like there's a lot of complicated tech out there. You need a Mac with some crab library that may, expose your passwords to the internet. They get a laptop and they pay, I don't know, $200 for OpenAI credits. And then OpenAI gives a web interface that you could ask it questions, like you could chat with it and say, if I wanted to make a class to download from Hugging Face, how would I do it? And then it spits some code out here, and then I guess you copy paste the code into your IDE, and like I mean, it works. I mean, sure, you could do it. It just seems like, a lot of copy paste stuff. It doesn't seem like a good flow, right? And there's a lot of challenges here. The other ones are like, well, this thing needs context, so it really can't run over there. So then you're stuck. If it needs some other source code you already have, you have to make a really big prompt and collapse it all in. And you're sending all your code out to the internet. Who knows? You may send it to the wrong place. Um, they have these other things where you could run MCP servers. So you have some web servers you also run on your laptop, and then you tunnel them, and there's just this whole complexity. And I wanted to get rid of it. I was like, how could I do local dev? How could I do meaningful local dev without a gigaton of hardware? And this is how I approach this problem. Believe it or not, I said, let's make a Maven plugin, right? Because what am I doing when I did this little problem? I'm just asking an inference engine over there to write some code for me. So I took your kind of common example, right? What's the most common example? Let's do some OOD. Uh, I want to make a circle class that has a method called getArea, right? We're talking English. Our spec is still English. And if we're going to go with this spec-driven development, we want to be able to take those requirements and generate code. All right. So that's kind of what I worked on here. Let's go. So let's go. We have a Maven plugin. Remember, I didn't rehearse this, so sorry if it's not all crisp, but this is actually real stuff. I don't have all day to rehearse meetings and presentations I give to nobody. So, um, new Maven plugin, TechNet Vibrant Maven plugin. Oh, what a nice name. What does it do? You could specify vibe specs, right? And you could put your system messages. You are an assistant that produces concise production grade software. Output Java code. generate Java code to the package IOTechNet shape, right? And then I give my instructions. Generate a Java interface named shape with a method named area that returns a double, and then generate a Java class named circle that extends the shape interface, right? So this is the TDD or vibe driven development. I just tell it what I want, and I'm going to have this Maven plugin go execute it for me. So just to show you how this would work, let me see. Uh, bu- 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 uh, all right. I'll show you target. So if you're familiar with like Swagger, for example, Swagger will generate code right here, right? What I'm going to do is I've had an old run. I'm going to delete it, so it's like a magic, nothing up my sleeve. Let's give it a go, and we're just going to delete this whole source directory, right? Nothing there, right? All right, nothing there, all gone. You hear the beeping, that means there's nothing in the directory, right? Now, what's so special about using this plugin? I drew this whole diagram with my laptop connecting to external services and doing that. The beauty of this is that Deliverance is a full Java inference engine, so the entire thing is going to run in my IDE controlled by me. Um, I don't have to worry about running parts of it in a Docker because it's going to execute arbitrary shell script and then send some results. I mean, not that there's no security worries, like there's still probably injections or something, but I'll show you how this works instead. The way this kind of works is um, the Maven plugin. So you're going to run your Maven target. Let's show what the target is. Right? We are going to run a target that's the Vibrant Maven plugin, and we're going to run generate, just like we would say Swagger. Swagger, here's my Swagger YAML, generate me some code. Here we say, here's our specs, generate me some code. What's different about this is that in this case, the Maven plugin, right, is able to load the library. It's a Java library. There's some C in it for like optimization. We got to write some code native to say everything's fast. The plugin is going to launch the inference engine locally, right? So not going out to the internet, no credentials, nothing is going to escape my frame, and the plugin is going to drive it. It's not a shell script or a Claude bot that's potentially driving it. My plugin is driving it. It's handing the requirements to the inference engine saying generate this. The inference engine generates some code, which can always be a little interesting. We'll talk about that later. And then we're going to parse that code and put it back in the project. That's what this does. So let's give it a run. Now that I've done all this speaking, probably it'll fail when I try to run it, but hopefully not. Now, just so you guys know, another nuance here is I'm running this on a laptop. I'll give you the specs with like no more than 8 gigs of RAM. Let me see. While this is running, here, I'll keep it over here. It outputs some stuff, Nothing is cool unless it outputs some random gibberish in my mind. So we'll keep that over here. This is right now. This is building from my requirements of doing my spec driven development. Let me drag this out here. Oh, I dragged to the wrong place. Here. Pop, pop. Oh, I can't. Whatever. Let's see. Pop to new window. All right. So this is still going. I'm going to give you the specs of my machine. All right. It's an old, cat. We're talking, this is a 4-core machine. Oh, 8-core machine, excuse me. Oh, no, 4-core because it probably counts these twice for the hyperthreading. 300 megahertz, or 3 gigahertz, pardon my French. 8 gigs of RAM. That's it. So there you go. You see, my thing ran. It took as long as it took. It took 59 seconds. But again, I'm doing other stuff on a really old laptop. This is a 7-year-old $200 laptop. So I don't have a GPU here. I don't need thousands of dollars to buy GPUs. This stuff runs on, COTS stuff. I'll tell you what model I use later and why. But here we go. So this plugin told me it made some output. Let's go look at it. Beautiful. Look at that. We asked it to generate an interface called shape with a method called area. Pow, it did. Awesome. What else did it make? We asked it to, we said, okay, make me a shape, make me a circle. Oh, look at that, a circle. So there you go. If you're impressed by shapes and circles and the stuff you learn in OOD, again, the hook here is completely native. This ran in Java, Java AI, on my laptop with only 8 megs of RAM as I'm recording the video. So I had to use my resources to run JavaScript, to run this paintbrush. And so what model did I use? Now, obviously, the better models do better and require more resources, right? And that's, if you're going to try to load a, I don't know, 50 billion param model, it's probably 50, 60 gigs on disk. For this, just because I'm doing kind of testing, I used, let's see, what did I use? I used the defaults. So let's see what the defaults are. The defaults are just a 3 billion parameter model quantized down to 4. So anyway, pretty straightforward, pretty simple requirements. I didn't need a big model because it didn't take a lot of thinking, but effectively it's just a trade-off. If you want to use a bigger model, you need a bigger machine, more memory, maybe you buy a GPU. But the point is this could scale down. I could do my development I could generate a meaningful class in a handful of seconds. And this is all from a Maven plugin. So the beauty of this is the way we built this plugin is, once you're happy with it, you could either say, right now what I'm doing is we're generating the sources into a generated sources directory, but you could generate them right to source. So I could just say put the code not in generated sources where it'll wiped away. I could say put it in source where I could commit it. I could just manually copy it. I'm sure if I navigate in my folder somewhere, there's probably a generated source folder in here somewhere, but I'm not going to look for it at the moment. Oh, here we go. Generated sources. I should have showed it this way. This would have been a nicer demo, right? So obviously I've got my circles and my shapes here. I could copy it. And you could see what the LLM output it, by the way. So, you know, you could see that in this case, the inference engine put both things in the same class, and I did some post processing to make 2 separate classes. So that's like the little trade-off of this. Like when you ask inference engines to do things, sometimes they output generate Java code, sometimes they do markdown. So I did a little post touching. I don't want to walk through all the code, but pretty much you have to come up with a way to tell your inference engine, put the code here, put your nonsense text here. And the better models do a better job, but when you're using a 3 billion param model, they could easily get confused. So I did a little cleanup stuff to get it working. But anyway, that's it. So that's vibe-driven development. So how would you use this? Let's see. How would you use it? Good question. So I'm going to ship it to Maven today. And what you would do is you're going to go out and in your build plugin section, you're going to say, hey, use the Maven plugin. You'll probably have to put a version, whatever the latest one on the internet is, version 2, version 3, it depends on when I ship it. And then you have to write your specs. You could write one or more specs. They could be specs for source, they could be specs for test. So if you're doing TDD, you could have the Vibrant plugin generate your sources and your text. But there you go. You write some system messages, you write some user messages, you tell it go generate some stuff. And then if you did a decent job, it'll be able to take the raw output. Again, there's a little magic, and parse the raw output into something else. So that's the whole spiel. I've probably, how long did I talk? Too long. 14 minutes. Oh, puke. No one's gonna listen for 14 minutes. So I'll probably have to edit this. But anyway, there you go. Vibe-driven development, spec-driven development, Maven XML. Should have used JSON YAML. Heck no. Forget JSON, forget YAML. I don't need all that stuff. I like this. This is good for me. Of course, you could send a PR. Don't read it from the Maven, read it from a Swagger YAML instead, or a YAML instead, fine. Just a PR. We don't have to do it this way. But anyway, that's the plugin. So pretty much you should be able to, everything you need here will pull dynamically from the internet. The whole inference engine, good to go. It'll run with Java. That's it. Good luck.